Chapter 17. The Rationale of Rubbing and Urine Packs. A correspondent who asked a number of intelligent questions surprised me on that account by saying, "Is not the skin a one-way organ?" And yet, what shred of evidence or deduction is there on which to base such an assumption? Take the simplest analogy. If one covers with a distended handkerchief the top of a cup containing a little milk and then inverts the cup, the milk will ooze out through the handkerchief. Conversely, if one puts a little milk on the handkerchief distended over the cup, the milk will ooze through into the cup, and the more quickly if one rubs it through the material. That the skin is capable of absorbing not only fluids but air has been known for very many years. Why are cellular underclothes advocated? Because the skin requires to breathe. Hence the unwisdom of clogging the pores with suppressive unguents or of wrapping oneself up in sheaths of warm underclothes, as did the Victorians. Should the skin be prevented from breathing entirely, the victim dies. The story of the child which was painted completely with liquid gold in order to cut a figure in a pageant is well known. The child was dead in 2 hours. On the other hand, the rubbing with milk of underweight and ill-thriving children was at one time a common practice and often attended with good results. As we all know, friction produces heat, and heat opens up the pores of the skin because they likewise generate heat. That is why it is so important what the compresses contain. Compresses which merely draw out and put nothing back can prove seriously strength-sapping, a matter which has been brought to my notice in many cases. Thus, the compress par excellence is a urine compress, and rubbing with urine is far superior to any other form of friction. For the latter purpose, old urine alone, or old mixed with fresh and warmed up, it must never be boiled, is the most efficacious. The most practical method is to store up urine in bottles, pour a very little into a flat-bottomed bowl, place the hands in the bowl so as to get just sufficient of the fluid on the palms, and then start the rubbing till the hands are dry. Pour a little more urine into the bowl and repeat the process. By dint of taking only a little at a time on one's hands, none of the urine drops onto the floor. As to the compresses, from all that has already been written in this book when relating case histories, how and when to apply them will have become obvious. However, it will do no harm to repeat myself. Clothes soaked in urine should be placed over the local site of the trouble and kept moist by adding more urine when required. They should be applied wherever there are boils, burns, wounds, lumps, swellings, or other aberrations. Naturally, the body will not be rubbed at the actual place where a compress is required. In no circumstances should suspicious lumps be rubbed, or the tissues in the near vicinity. I have already mentioned briefly that the most important parts to rub are the neck, face, head, and feet. But that does not mean to say that the whole body should not be rubbed as well. Unless the malady requires a compress at one or other site, this is an essential part of urine therapy in order to supply nourishment to the patient during the urine fast. Apart from that, urine is the most wonderful skin food that exists, as may be seen from the hands of those who do the rubbings. It has been suggested by skeptics that a dry rub or a rub with plain cold water would be equally effective. But the answer is an emphatic negative. I have tried both. Even urine fasts without the urine rubbings are attended with palpitations, just as are fasts on plain water only. I grant that the rubbing is both excellent exercise and acts as an excellent massage, but without the urine it does not and cannot rebuild wasted tissues. Only in very bad cases where the patient is too weak and emaciated to stand it have I dispensed with the rubbings, in which case the urine can be absorbed via the skin by means of urine packs. I will now give a case history to show that continued poulticing with any other substance, however apparently harmless, can prove highly strength-sapping to the patient as well as quite unproductive of a cure. Gentleman, well over 50, had been an enthusiastic follower of what may be called a caterpillar diet, under quotes. It consisted of one meal a day, chiefly of wholemeal, bread, salads, fresh fruits, fresh milk, nuts, and honey. He had by this means hoped to reduce his corporation, under quotes, and to cure an arthritic and dropsical condition and other troubles as well, chronic costiveness being one, for which he resorted to salts and high enemata. When he finally sent for me, he had been in the doctor's hands for some time and was in such a state that he had to have 2 nurses. Although now taking 2 meals and 4 snacks a day, he was under 10 stone, very weak, bedfast, suffering from bed sores, and spending half the day and most of the night coughing up phlegm and ropey mucus. But what I would draw special attention to here was the state of his arm. About 2 years previously, a running sore had manifested itself to which poultices had been applied. In spite of this, or in my opinion, largely because of it, he now had 5 discharging sores, the poulticing having been continued all the time. 2 years. I at once suggested that all this poulticing was responsible more than any other factor for his loss of strength, in that the constant draining, undercourse, of nourishment via his arms was starving both his limbs and his torso. The upshot was, though the nurse protested, that the poulticing ceased, and the arm was simply bound in plain unmedicated rag and not touched for a week. His meals were regulated to 2 a day, with no snacks, and only plain cool water to drink. All medicines, they had merely upset his digestion, were discarded. At the end of a week, the plain bandages were removed for inspection, but although the sores were still suppurating, there was evidence to suggest that the bulk of the matter had been absorbed by the heat of the blood via the pores of the skin. In a month, even though there was still a little discharge, the arm was usable, and the patient could write letters for the first time in years. Without massage or any remedial local measures whatsoever, he had gained 14 pounds in weight. The most marked changes showed in his face, both arms, chest, shoulders, and buttocks. I may add, by the way, that I healed his bed sores with nothing more scientific, underquotes, than my own saliva. The chief point to note in this case, however, is that as soon as the medicated poultices were stopped, the patient put on more flesh, though he was taking less food. He was subsequently restored to full health by urine therapy and a well-balanced diet, not based on the theories of the late Arnold Ehret and company. And now to return to the rationale of rubbing, and to supply some details of my own case which have not yet been mentioned. During my first fast on urine and water, I was intrigued, though not alarmed, to notice the palpitations of my heart, which at times were so pronounced that I almost felt I had 2 hearts instead of one. I ascribed this, contrary to medical assumptions, to the theory that my heart was not getting a sufficient supply of blood to pulsate upon, and therefore accelerated somewhat, like a watch when the controlling hairspring is broken or out of order. It was then once again I got an idea from the Bible, this time from the New Testament, for I read, "When thou fastest, anoint thy head and wash thy face." Matthew 6:17. I am fully aware that the interpretation I put on this injunction may seem far-fetched, but as I have said, it nonetheless gave me an idea, and having read it, proceeded to rub my head, face, neck, and other parts of my body with urine, and the palpitations ceased. Moreover, by this method, I found it possible to fast, if not too ill to start with, without interrupting one's daily tasks. Patients with skin diseases, for example, have fasted, carried on their work, and to those not in the know, have not seemed to be fasting at all. As for myself, I can undertake a fast if so minded to encourage others, and not even a doctor with his impressive instruments can detect from my heart, etc., that I am abstaining from food. This, however, would soon become apparent if I attempted to fast without the urine rubbings.